Muslim, but I think for this particular case, I would probably strongly recommend going to a Muslim lawyer because it understands the situation and knows the ruling, the Islamic ruling behind it, so that it can apply. So I think that would be a key. So you've mentioned here that we can use either way, but and it's totally dependent on the person itself if they wanted to go to a lawyer or they can write their own. Australian law flexible. At the same time, you mentioned that if you don't write a will, that the law, the Australian law, can. Did you say that they can enforce a particular law that they feel that is suitable, or is there a default law that comes in and divides the properties or the things that you have left over?
So if a person dies intestate, meaning not having a will, then the intestacy rules will apply. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but essentially, is the rules, the Islamic rules concerning the distribution of the estate will not be followed at all. Okay, it's that simple. So, to give you an example, if there is a spouse, so a wife, the wife will get 100%. The kids will miss out. Okay, if there is a wife and children, and the estate is worth more than $100,000, the wife or the spouse will take the first $100,000, and then the balance of the estate will be split in equal shares between the wife or the spouse and the children. If no relatives can be found, all the money will go to the government. So Muslims must understand that it can have pretty dire consequences if they don't write wills. And this is why I try my best to explain to people that just write a will. Even if you don't want to see a lawyer, well, maybe get some guidance from someone and do your best. Otherwise, pay $250, $275, get a will done. You know, people pay more for their mobile phones. And we're talking about something which is really serious.
Yes.
The other thing that Muslims have to be aware of is if you do die intestate, the family will have no control over what goes on. So the public trustee will start controlling the administration. The bank accounts could be frozen. A spouse or a loved one will be unable to deal with property. Everything will be frozen. So it's serious.
To that extent, I mean, I mentioning that there is a default law, but to get it to that extent, that I'm thinking, how did we miss out on this all these years? It's quite serious and it's quite dangerous in a way. And you mentioning here that even the wife can't access it until everything gets sorted out, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's not according to what you want, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's according. So in saying that, no matter what happens, if you forget to write a will, and then you pass away, there is no way that your wife and your kids can say, look, that we have an Islamic law and we want to divide it that way. Mm. So the Australian law would not accept that.
No, another good question. If you do not provide, if you do not write a will, your wishes will not be listened to one bit. If your wishes are not in the will, whether they be Islamic wishes in accordance with Islamic principles or otherwise, if they're not recorded in the will, they will not be entertained at all.
Not heard.
Not heard.
Not heard. So it's dangerous.
I think the most important point from the point of view of a Muslim is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires us to write wills. There's a surah about it. A big part of Surah An-Nisa talks about inheritance. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam required us to write wills. So irrespective of all these issues that we encounter in Western society, we should be doing it because it's mandated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah. Very good to let us know, and I am one of those people that probably myself would now consider will immediately. In saying that, there is a question that pops up to my head. A lot of people listening now, and they may consider it. as mentioned, I am one of those people which I'm considering it right now. The question here is, if I write my will now, and I'm at my age, and I live another 50 years, what happens to that will?
Yeah, very good question. So, if your circumstances do not change, the will remain valid. Uh, the the only time that you would want to amend your will is if your circumstances change. So, to give you a good example, if you're married, perhaps this is not the best example, but if you're married and you divorce, that automatically revokes the will. And many people wouldn't know this, but I'm not encouraging divorce, obviously. No. So probably that's not a good example. But if you marry, if you have another child, let's say you've got 2 children at the moment, you have another child, you may want to consider whether you need to amend your will. But generally speaking, you write a will, unless you get divorced, that will continue to be will continue to exist. It will continue to be valid as long as it's written in accordance with the laws and it's appropriately witnessed. But you should give thought to the change in your circumstances. A will is not a one-off document. I know of people who've drafted 3 or 4 wills because their circumstances change. The beauty of wills is you can provide for other things. You can put in a clause for who will be the guardian of your children should something happen to you. And from an Islamic point of view, that's very important.
Yes.
If you don't have a spouse but you have children, you may, if let's say your spouse passes away and then you pass away, who's going to look after those children? You can stipulate that in the will. I put in all my wills provisions regarding burial. So although the provisions are not strictly binding, they act as a guide to the executor of the estate as to how you wish to be buried. So, for example, in the wills that I draft, I ensure that the provisions provide for an Islamic burial, the body to be washed in accordance with Islamic principles, prayed for, buried in accordance with Islamic principles, no music at the ceremony, no big fancy tombstone. You can stipulate all these things. So a will is not just in relation to giving away your estate. You can also have these other provisions in there as well.
Which is, I think, a really important factor. Once again, people don't really know it. In terms of, just having all these extras that you can put in your will. I wouldn't have even thought that you can actually have these in your will, which is amazing. It's really good that to have that in there, so that you are facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that you want it to be. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may even hold you accountable for not writing your will the right way. So if something does happen after you pass away, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may hold you accountable for it because you didn't fulfill your requirement. So Jazakallah khair, these are really, really good, important questions. Now, just on the last question, and we can maybe wrap it up then. You said amendable. Can people bring it to you to amend the will, or can they do it? How does it work? So, for example, if I write my will, if you help, you do the draft of my will, and then 3 years later, I purchase a house, that I wanted to put the house on the will. Do I have to come back to you, or is there like a next step, to put that included in the will that I have?
The law provides for codicils, which are essentially like an annexure to a will, but I don't, strictly speaking, I don't do that. I will do a new will. I don't like, and you'll find a lot of lawyers don't like doing codicils, because what happens is you add another page to the document and things can get misplaced, things can get messy, it doesn't look all that professional. So what we do is, if you've done a will with me, for example, the hard work essentially has been done. So if you come back to me 3 years later and you say, Belal, I've bought a home and I want to provide for that home in my will, it's typically a minor change. So, I'll bring up the electronic file, and I'll add a provision or take out a provision if you want to change something around, and then reprint the document. You'll re-sign it in front of the presence of 2 independent witnesses, myself and a personal assistant or someone else. So it's just a more professional way of going about it. One point I just want to make is if people do have, if Muslims have had wills done, they should be very careful with the original document. So if the document is marked, if there's a paper clip on it and it's left an indent on the piece of paper, or if they've unstapled it, it can create huge problems when it comes to the court issuing probate. So an affidavit, a sworn statement, will need to be filed to explain why is there a mark on the piece of paper, why was the staple undone, why was there a paper clip. So any Muslims who do have original wills, my recommendation is you should keep them in a safe or at a law firm. But if you are keeping it at your home, be very careful with that document.
You mentioned law firm. Now, can we leave it in a law firm? And I guess the answer is yes. If we do, the cost involved and the procedure of doing it so.
So most law firms have safe custody registers. We do. And the price that I charge for wills for Muslims is inclusive of the storage. So there's no additional cost. We will keep the original in a safe custody. We will issue a copy, as many copies as the person likes. They might want to give it to family members so they're all aware. We'll also send a letter out every 2 years reminding them that the original is kept at our firm, and there's no cost for that service. It's all part of the service. And, we really, to be really blunt, I make no money out of wills. The time and the effort that goes into it, it's really just part of service. And I like doing it because I think Muslims need to do wills. And I'm trying to, emphasize that message, but it's so critically important. So to answer your question, yes, we do provide that service, and I would recommend it. We do offer clients, if they wish to take the original home, they can. I would recommend that they don't, just in case the will gets destroyed or marked. It can create problems.
And I think I'll be the first person to leave my will with you. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you. You've given us some really, really, really important information. And I think it's crucial information which we have missed out on for a long time. May Allah reward you, and alhamdulillah, with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that now we have discovered this valuable information. And I think it's important for everybody at home that are listening right now to consider writing a will for themselves, to make sure that, going forward, we're all human beings. We all pass away at some stage. So this is part of the life cycle. So I think you've given us very valuable information. I do thank you for it. Jazakallah khair, and may Allah reward you for all the hard work you do. We know of you, for the work that you do, and now you've fulfilled us with the information. Jazakallah khair, and we hope that you have an amazing, good, blessed rest of the Ramadan, inshallah. And inshallah, if we have time, we can maybe meet with you again to share with us some of the value, some of the important, issues that people face here, which we don't know about, that you can give us some answers to. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you, and inshallah see you again.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.